I wanted to ask you what was your thinking in agreeing to this project and being interviewed about being a second generation person?
At some point at Fordham Prep High School, one of the religious studies teachers, Barbara Reynolds, having come to my shows, so she knew my background, asked me if I would be willing to speak in her religious studies class. The Holocaust was being taught. She taught Viktor Frankl. One of the books she taught was Viktor Frankl. And she asked me if I'd be willing to speak in her class and show my artwork. And I agreed, nervously agreed. But that sort of started me on speaking to students, and students at Fordham Prep, and then students in different places besides Fordham Prep, because I felt it was important and effective. And and I guess the issue when you speak in a school like that, like Fordham Prep or any high school actually, questions that come up from be it Holocaust deniers to other people questioning, did this really happen, made me feel it was important that I spoke about it, and then started to develop how could you use the arts to teach the Holocaust. So when you asked me to speak, I felt that that was important.
You've also taught teachers how to teach the Holocaust using art.
Right.
How did you get involved with the Manhattan College Holocaust Center and become a board member?
About maybe 20 years or 15 years, Barbara Reynolds was the connection. Her husband, Joe Reynolds, taught at Manhattan College. There was this, she would go, Fred Schweitzer ran the Holocaust Center, and she would always go to the talks. And one talk she went to, she noticed there was artwork up. So she spoke to Fred and people involved in the Holocaust Center at that time and asked me if I would have a show, if I would be, asked them if they'd be interested first, and then they asked me if I'd be willing to show artwork, which I did. So that was my initial introduction. So I guess probably 20 years later, she then became involved in the Holocaust Center, and I was asked if I would be interested in being involved. So that's how I got asked to be on the board.
Have you been involved in any second generation groups?
Initially, when they started, I went to a few, but I never stayed involved. You know, there is a society where, you know, my father belonged, where, you know, where my mother is buried. That was, you know, from the area of Germany, Poland, Germany, he came from. And there was a second generation group there, but somehow I never got involved.
Do you feel that the Holocaust is being taught successfully to, first of all, to Jewish children and then also to children in general?
Well, if you look at the state of the world, no, but just the fact that it's being taught has to be effective. I think just the fact anything brought up to anyone has to be effective in some way. So,
did say for example, the difference between yourself and your children when they were in school, were they taught anything?
Yes, they were taught the Holocaust. You know, children in school at a very young age write about their heritage. They write, you know, I remember my sons being asked to write about their grandparents to look up. So, yes, at a very young age, they're taught that. By 5th or 6th grade, they're reading books in English on the Holocaust and beyond. Yeah. So they were taught about that.
You sort of mentioned in passing that you were getting your feelings about your parents having been part of the Holocaust out in your artwork.
right.
That's the main avenue that you'd use to sort of deal with it yourself.
I think probably that is. I think that is. And then when I started to speak to students, so, and once I started to speak to students, I mean, at that point it was about, you know, showing my artwork and telling their stories. And, you know, that led me to think about, well, if I were, and I don't teach the Holocaust. I mean, you know, in my studio art class, I do a studio art class. But just, you know, how would you use the arts if you wanted to teach the Holocaust? So, is it effective? You know, who knows? You know, but it's important.
Yes, definitely. Is there anything else that you would want to add about the way the Holocaust has affected the children of those who survived, and the grandchildren? Affected their lives or made their lives go in a certain way?
I think how the parents of second generation dealt with the Holocaust would be a way. I said this earlier, I was glad that my parents had such different personalities, because my mother was more, her personality was more depressive kind of personality. So, you know, I think that certainly her reaction, the Holocaust might have made her more depressive, but then she was maybe also a depressive person in the way she looked at the world. And my father was much more, you're alive, live, you know. So whether it was the Holocaust that, you know, you know, this is a thought I haven't had before, but just simply the fact, well, I don't know that my father would have been as successful a human being if he stayed in Germany and there wasn't the Holocaust, because I don't know that in Germany or Poland he would have been able to start a business, become successful, make a lot of money, buy a home. So, you know, it seems that, you know, everyone's experience in life takes them in a certain direction in who they are. And, you know, my father, we would always say it was a good thing my father and uncles were in business together, because my father was a good salesman. People liked him. He knew how to sell. He knew how to get people to trust like him. But if he had to just keep books and do that, it would have been a disaster. My uncle was very good at that, wasn't a good salesman, he didn't have that personality. So that's why it worked, you know.
So it was a match not just with your mother, but with her brother too.
Right. So my mother would always say, don't go into business with your family, but yeah.
Well, certainly the Holocaust set people's lives, if they survived, in a whole different direction than it would have gone otherwise.
Right. And, you know, just my mother's relationship to her two brothers. I mean, her brother who survived, she was extremely close to him, always went to him for advice. Would that have happened? He was a very observant Jew. He became in the family a very observant Jew. He was married before the war, had a child. She had one brother who was a Zionist. So I don't know, you know, I wonder, would he have been the one she went to for advice if they hadn't been in the Holocaust? You know, it's hard to say. I don't know.
She might have gone to her parents for advice.
Or gone, right, she clearly would have gone, right. So.
Well, it seems that...
Though, you know, I don't want to diminish, you know, the horror they went through. I mean, clearly it was horror because of the war. They maybe would have talked about it. But they wanted to bring me up as normal as possible.
Yeah,
so.
They didn't want you to feel it the way they did.
Right.
But yet somehow it filters through to the children.
It clearly does, and it clearly did to my children.
Yes.
So, my older son, for sure.
You found the outlet in art.
Right.
And do you have any thoughts about how your children have dealt with it? I know your son made a movie.
Right, my son was a film major in college, and his dissertation film was on how he learned about the Holocaust through my paintings. So clearly that had
He dealt with it in a creative way also.
Well. Right.
So it seems that the family has dealt with it creatively.
Right, right. I guess so. Yes.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just that, it's important that humankind pay attention to what they do, and why.
I gather
I don't know how to do that, but
from what you said before about the way the world is now, that they haven't totally paid attention and haven't used the experience to prevent genocides that came later.
Right. I'm not terribly political, but clearly when I was 18, I was against the Vietnam War. I didn't probably even know what the Vietnam War was, except that you're against war. Then the recent Iraq war made me, initially with President Bush in power, feel hopeless. I actually stopped painting the Holocaust. What was the point? I mean, it was kind of a hopeless feeling. And then President Obama was elected, so I think there is hope. There is change, at least. It's you get older, you see mankind as they are. You don't lose your ideals, but you realize it's multi-layered.
Do you think your feelings about what mankind is like are colored by what your parents went through, or by knowing that people could do that to them?
Yes, but as an adult, I think, not so much as a child.
They protected you from that.
Right. And as I said, I was a hippie. I was against the Vietnam War. We were against it because we were drafted. My brother had a potential to be drafted. You understand it personally, and you understand that you're against war, and understanding that you're against war as an adult, and then thinking about my parents, I think it's a different kind of understanding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.